Hey guys, my name's Griffin. We're at Timbertrain Coffee Depot, and I'm here to show you how to brew filter coffee. So, filter coffee can be intimidating. With a couple simple tips, it's not too hard. So, let's get into it. What are you going to need today? Today, we need a few different things. Obviously, a dripper. I have the Origami here, but any kind of dripper you can get your hands on. I have a paper filter. This is the Origami as well. The main difference between using paper filters and metal filters is that paper filters will stop a lot more of those fines and the oils from the coffee that come out. So when you brew with a metal filter, you tend to get a cup that's a little fuller, a little more creamy, but it can also be a little gritty at sometimes. So the paper filter we're using just to make it a little cleaner. Next, you need a carafe. I just have a simple one here. We'll need a scale. Any kitchen scale will do, but this just helps us keep it nice and consistent. You'll also need a kettle. We always recommend using filtered water. Water plays such a huge role in the brewing process of the coffee, so using good water is essential. We like to set ours around 96 degrees or just off boil. We also need a timer. So I have one built into the scale, but you could just use your phone nearby. Next, of course, we're gonna need some ground coffee. Today, I'm using Timbertrain's Ethiopia Cabana. It's a nice washed Ethiopia. It has a nice balanced acidity with some tropical notes. It's really good. And finally, just a cup to taste. And today's recipe calls for 22 grams of ground coffee, and we're grinding this just a bit finer than an auto drip machine. And we're gonna use 350 grams of water. So let's get started. First, I'm gonna take our paper filter, and if you have these ones, you just need to fold over the side here. Just fold it over like that. Open it up. I like to pinch it a bit, and that just helps make it easier to put in and stay in there. Then I have some hot water here, just kind of off boil. I'm gonna pour it in and pre-wet the filter. So what this does is two things. It heats up our dripper so that the temperature stays more consistent throughout the brew. And it also washes off any paper flavor we might have still on the paper. So I like to use a fair amount of water for that. Just let it drain through. And then I'm gonna pour it out. The next step, turning on our scale. And we're gonna put in our coffee and just double check the weight again, 22 grams. And I like to level the brew bed. Just give it a little shake, a couple taps, and tare again. So now we're just about ready. I'm gonna grab my hot water, and we're ready to pour. So this first pour, we're gonna start the timer and immediately pour 55 grams in nice spirals. So this is the bloom phase. And so what the bloom phase does is two things. It helps make sure all the coffee is fully saturated, expel any CO2 that it may have built up in the roast. And what you saw me do there is right after the bloom, I gave the brewer a quick swirl, and that just helps mix everything together. So our next pour is at 45 seconds, and we're gonna add another 300 grams about. And so it's gonna bring the total brew volume up to 350 grams. So for this pour, I'm just doing nice, steady spiral motions. It's important here not to go too crazy with the brewer. You don't want your wrist going up and down. We're just doing nice spiral motions. And this whole pour will take about 35 seconds. So 350 grams, at about 35 seconds of pouring. And our last step is we're just gonna give the brewer a quick swirl, and that just helps level the coffee bed so that when it draws down, it can draw down evenly. So we're aiming for about 3 minutes in our total brew time. But if you're making pour over and it draws down too quickly, maybe 2 minutes and 30 seconds, you tend to get coffee that's a little watery. It's gonna be a little more acidic, maybe sour sometimes, and it's not gonna have good sweetness. If you ground too fine and it takes too long to draw down, closer to 3 minutes and 30 seconds, you're gonna get coffee that's a little bitter, usually not very complex, and a little astringent, maybe staining your tongue a bit. But if your drawdown takes around 3 minutes, it matches our recipe, then your coffee will showcase its flavors best. You'll get a good sweetness with a nice balanced acidity. So after a brew's done, around 3 minutes, I always like to look at the brew bed just to make sure it's nice and flat. The flat brew bed means that as the water's going through, it can all go through at the same time compared to if there was a mound in the middle, some would go through later than others. So the flat brew bed is always what I look for. So now, take off our brewer, and we're ready to drink our coffee. So I always recommend keeping a notebook, tracking your coffee brews, how you like them, how they tasted, and what you could change. Enjoy.